Now the next point of understanding in mineral nutrition is the role of each macronutrient individually. So we are going to take nitrogen, phosphorus and sulphur, what are their roles and what deficiency symptoms a plant is going to show in case these nutrients are deficient in the soil. That means the soil is not having the required critical amount of the nutrients present inside it, or due to some reason the plant is not able to take up these mineral elements. So we are going to see their roles individually. You know that C, H and O, that is carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, they are very much crucial and are taken up from the atmosphere itself and water. They have an important role, they make the maximum bulk of the plant. Apart from those, the macronutrients that we study is nitrogen, phosphorus and sulphur, and we have calcium, we have potassium, we have magnesium. 6 of the elements are termed under macronutrients. These are the macro elements that we require. So first of all, let's take the first one, that is nitrogen. We are going to study where this nitrogen is going to be present, not just nitrogen, every macro element that we are talking about, and we are going to study the role of individual macro element, and then we are going to put a light on the deficiency symptoms that the plant is going to show in case the soil is deficient of that particular element. So first of all, in case of nitrogen, you know, nitrogen is going to be present in those areas where there would be meristematic tissue, that is meristematic growth is taking place. That means the growing parts of the plant would have abundant nitrogen present in them. First of all, how much quantity of the plant is having nitrogen in it? It is 1 to 3% of the plant body would comprise of nitrogen. Now you know nitrogen is very important because it is part of amino acids, it is part of proteins, it is part of nitrogenous bases. So it is very crucial for the plant and it is present in almost all the macromolecules which are of biological importance for the growth of plant. So the presence of nitrogen in the macromolecules like proteins, like nucleic acids, or the nucleoproteins we may say, and other macromolecules like enzymes, which are very important. These macromolecules cannot be formed if nitrogen is not present. If the macromolecules of such great importance are not formed, you can make it out that plant would not show that much growth which is expected from it. Moreover, if it is about protein synthesis, nitrogen is required over there. How the nitrogen is taken up from the soil, that you are very well aware of, that it would be taken up in the form of ammonia, or it would be taken up in the form of nitrate ions. So there is an enzyme known as nitrogenase which enables the uptake of nitrogen from the soil, because though nitrogen is part of atmosphere, it cannot be taken up by the plants from the atmosphere directly. It would be taken up from the soil of the plants, from the roots. Roots would absorb it in the form of ions or in the form of ammonia. Now talking about the deficiency symptoms, as you have seen, they have a very crucial role in various developmental factors of the plant. So first thing that we see in case of nitrogen deficiency, and of course it would be present in richly present in those areas where meristematic tissue is present. That means we are going to find these deficiency symptoms towards the areas where there would be more growth. So we see chlorosis. Chlorosis is a condition when the plant leaves, basically they turn yellow. That means the loss of green coloration, that is known as chlorosis. First thing we see as a deficiency symptom of nitrogen, that the leaves are showing chlorosis, they become yellowish. As a result of chlorosis, what happens is that there is a pigment known as anthocyanin. It gets accumulated and deposited around the stem, due to which the stem appears purple in color. So in case you see yellow leaves, purplish stem, that would be pointing towards the nitrogen deficiency. Apart from that, at times we see that plant is growing properly, but if the flowering is delayed, then also it is believed that the soil might be deficient in nitrogen, or the plant would be unable to take up the nitrate ions. And in case you see the size of fruits and seeds, that would also be smaller in size in case of nitrogen deficiency. So in a way, nitrogen enables the luxurious growth of a plant. All right, if the growth is quite luxurious, that means the plant is growing as expected, then it would be having rich nitrogen uptake would be taking place. And in case these deficiency symptoms are being observed that points towards the nitrogen deficiency. And please remember, it is very important component of all the macromolecules which enable the plant to survive and carry its various physiological functions. Second one is sulfur. We are going to consider sulfur before phosphorus because in terms of abundance, apart from CHO, first comes nitrogen, which is followed by sulfur. As you can see, in terms of its availability or abundance, I would say it is 0.05 to 1.5% of the plant body. Now you know sulfur is an important component of various proteins. So sulfur plays an important role when it is about chlorophyll synthesis. When the chlorophyll is to be formed, then it has an important role in chlorophyll synthesis. So one thing that comes in mind after reading about nitrogen, that because it plays a role in synthesis of chlorophyll, its deficiency would lead to chlorosis. Okay. Here also you see that deficiency is seen in young leaves. Here also the chlorosis would be in case of young leaves. Now it is essential for nodule formation. Now when we talk about nodule formation, you know nodulation is very important for nitrogen uptake. So supposedly sulfur is not abundantly present in the soil, nodulation would not take place and the nitrogen uptake from the soil would also be hampered. So you can see the deficiency symptoms going hand in hand in case for sulfur and for nitrogen. Then it determines the protein structure. As I told you earlier, proteins have sulfur as an important component. So the protein structures would be determined by the presence or the absence of sulfur. Sulfur plays a crucial role. Sulfur ions, that is sulfate ions that are taken up from the soil. Of course, every mineral would be taken up in the form of its ions. So the sulfate ions, they would be taken up from the soil depending on the availability of sulfur, and in case the sulfur does not meet the critical concentration which is required, which is 0.05 to 1.5%, then the plant is going to show the following symptoms, in which we first of all have discussed chlorosis. In young leaves, because it is part of important again biomacromolecules like proteins, so the young leaves are going to show chlorosis because it plays an important role in chlorophyll synthesis as well. Then it would be there would be a condition observed where the stems, which would be abnormally hard, which is not required from the plant. Young growing plant would have a hard and woody stem in case the sulfur deficiency is seen in the soil. And you might have seen that certain citric fruits like orange and lemon, some of them are quite juicy, some of them seem like they have lesser juicy content. That is because the lesser juicy content is due to the deficiency of sulfur. Alright, so these are the various deficiency symptoms a plant is going to show, out of which chlorosis is the most important symptoms, which would be the initial symptom of the sulfur deficiency. Then we come to phosphorus. In terms of its abundance, it is 0.05 to 1% of the plant body. Where it would be present in the storage tissues. Now you know what are storage tissues. If you don't know, so phosphorus would be abundantly found in the parenchymatous tissue. Like you have storage tissue in the fruit, you have some sort of storage tissue in the seeds. So you would find lot of phosphorus over there. Then it is the component of nucleic acids. You know that phosphate group comes and attaches to the nucleoside and then the nucleic acid is being formed. So it is the component of nucleic acids and various proteins. Moreover, you know that ATP is the energy currency according to which all the living cells, they carry out their metabolic activities. This P over here is phosphate itself, the phosphate ion which would be taken up from the soil, and the phosphorylation reactions would take place. So it is part of number of phosphorylated compounds, and those compounds are very important for growth purposes because ultimately growth is brought about by the processes of metabolism, and these components are very important for metabolism. Now when we see these important contributions of phosphorus, we are bound to deal with certain deficiency symptoms in case the plant is not getting abundant phosphorus. So first of all, the thing that comes is abnormal chloroplast. Now it is very clear because the chloroplast shape and size would be abnormal, it would be not as expected. So somehow it is going to lead to chlorosis. Alright, chlorosis is the condition which is the loss of green coloration. Over here the chloroplasts are abnormal, so chlorosis condition would come over there. Leaves would become yellow. The leaf fall would be promoted. That means leaves after yellowing would die and they would fall down. There would be a delayed flowering. Flowering would be delayed in the plants. And the shoots and roots would be short and slender, very thin, thinner than that of expected, and the root system is quite extensive. So these are the various deficiency symptoms which are going to come into our knowledge in case this plant is not having appropriate uptake of the phosphorus and the soil is deficient of phosphorus. So these three important macronutrients we have studied. We have studied where they are available, what is their role, and we have discussed their deficiency symptoms. Next we take up the next three macromolecules.